Welcome to the Landscaping Podcast. My name's Joel Barnett and I'm your host. And in today's episode, we're talking to Tim Harper of Space Capsule Garden Co. So Tim and I first met each other, like a few of my guests, at the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show. And in this episode, we talk about our time there in the Boutique Gardens competition, as well as after that, Tim came back to South Australia and built a few more show gardens, and also how he's also running a indoor plant and coffee shop cafe in South Australia and doing design work still as well. So talk about the struggles with that and how he's juggling all those businesses, as well as he's having a couple of his own podcasts. So it should be a good chat with Tim, so hopefully you enjoy it. So here's Tim Harper. Tim, thanks for joining us on the Landscaping Podcast. It's good to see you again. I haven't spoken in a while.
Thank you for having me. I was hoping to see you in person, but what's another Zoom meeting?
That's it. That's quite an impressive setup you got behind you there too, for people who are watching the video.
And it always looks this good in here. It's,
good.
It's never messy or anything.
So how did you get into the landscaping industry to be the plant nerd you are now?
It's a long story, so we'll try and keep it to 2 hours. So basically, I actually finished school, and which is, you can put a round of applause there. I finished school and actually went and did a diploma of sound production, so recording bands and mixing music and stuff like that, because that's what I wanted to do back in the day. Probably at that point, still not really any connection to anything landscaping or garden in particular. Played that around for a little bit until I realised it probably wasn't my future. So it's more of a hobby. Then just sort of bounced around a few boring jobs until I ended up landscape labouring for someone who I heard, like you always do, I heard of the job through someone who knew someone that had a landscaping business. Started there, and I was probably in my early 20s, and I was a real know-all. I didn't like being told what to do, even though it wasn't my business. And it's only in reflection that I've learned that I was probably a bit of an asshole. But we all have times like that where you do things differently. But anyway, that gave me my start. So that was just straight into, building retaining walls, garden maintenance, paving, just everything, and lots of it. A really small business. So that kind of got me interested in that side of it. Toyed with the idea of becoming a lawnmower man, just to get out of that business. But, that wasn't exactly what I wanted to do. I was just looking for other things I could do in the industry, and then ended up hearing about a job through another staff member in aged care. And then I got a job as a gardener for just under 10 years doing that job. So that was great because it was like a full-time gardening job where I just had sort of free rein to, well, as long as I kept on top of the maintenance, I had free rein to start doing little projects and bits and pieces. And that's where I really started to feel like it's what I wanted to do. That was, I didn't quite make it to 10 years because of the Melbourne Flower Show, which I blame. I quit. I cracked the shits and quit at 9 years and like 11 months. And then I sort of started my own landscape construction, very small, just me and a bad mood, basically. I'd finished my landscape design study while I still worked in aged care. And that's sort of how I've ended up where I am today. And then I just started a shop as well, just because I felt like it.
So you did so when you're working in aged care, you were doing study, and then after you'd finished your study, you started doing the maintenance there. Is that right?
Yeah. So I was already doing all the maintenance, but I did the study because I had a bit of an injury. So I was like, what can I keep doing that's not necessarily planting and mowing forever? So I went off and I negotiated to go and do it part-time while I still worked there. And at the time, they seemed really keen because it meant when I finished, I could be way more involved in all the new sites they were building and whatever, because they don't want you to just study and then leave. But then they sort of showed no interest when I finished, so I left. So it kind of worked out well. Because what happened was I was coming up to the start of 2017. So we had the Melbourne Flower Show that I first met you at. And I tried to get the person I worked with to take annual leave. He wanted to come over and help me, and they wouldn't let us both take leave at the same time. So I pulled over on the side of the road on the way home that afternoon. I rang Kate and said, I think I'm done. So I quit.
Did you get him to put in annual leave first and then you quit?
They wouldn't let him. But you know, all these weird little things happen, and you end up where you end up. You know, that's just sort of what happened then, and I attribute that year in Melbourne as like that sort of got me to where I am now, and why I'm still doing it, because of, you know, the experience of going over there. And yeah.
So did you pretty much start your business, like Space Capsule Garden Co, the construction side of it, at Mifkus, or
I was still Space Capsule Landscape Design then, because I thought that sounded better at the time.
Yep.
But then I changed it because my direction was going to be that I could build that up a little bit and build my own gardens. But anyone that's done that knows you end up just labouring, and then quickly changing shirts when you have a design meeting, and like parking around the corner so people don't see the bomb you're driving and all that. So, but I to be honest, after that, I sort of was a little bit in no man's land with if I wanted to do that, because I love design and I still do, but working on my own was just killing me. Like the time, and with 2 kids, the time, you know, any second I wasn't working, I felt guilty. And and then I went back the next year and helped you again. Not helped you again.
Going back to the first one, how did you find out about the competition to enter the boutique gardens competition at the garden show?
I reckon so. We finished TAFE 2014, and I became a student member of Alden, which I'm still involved in, and I sort of did a couple of things with them, and then I think that's where I sort of became aware of the garden show. And then a few people who I'd studied with were looking for a bit of something to do, because you just finished studying and you're not like, the work doesn't just come. And I said, oh, why don't we go over and like have a look? So that would have been 2015. Was that the year you had your boutique garden? Would that have been 2015?
No, it was 16, I think. Yeah, 16. I did 16, 17. I think
right, because
I did anything 15.
I went 2015 and 16. And as soon as I got there, it just was like it was like being in it was like my Disneyland. I sort of felt like this is what I want to do. And then started finding out about that Landscape Victoria competition. A couple of years later, I entered it. In fact, I think I entered it the year before with a poxy entry that was terrible. So I'm glad I didn't get that one. Or else you would have definitely not. You would no chance of coming last had I put that one in. I was new. No, that's what I'm saying. But even if you had the opportunity to, you wouldn't have, based on this design. It was horrible. So yeah, I spent ages kind of looking at what had been done there before and what interested me in design, and that's how I came up with my design. And yeah, next minute I'm load up the caravan and off we go.
So was that pretty exciting when you got there? I assume you got an email as well to let you know that you've been selected to build it there.
Yeah, it was awesome. Like I from memory, I feel like the announcement got delayed a little bit because I was so eager to find out what was happening. When I finally found out, yeah, I was thrilled. And then it set in sort of what I had to organise, because then I had to find a builder, I had to find everything. And then the grant we got, I pretty much burned through in about 3 seconds. And just the realisation of it went from a dream to like a project managing exercise for like 12 months.
Yeah. So then you're people who aren't aware, you're based in South Australia, and this was entering the Melbourne International Flower and Garden Show, obviously in Melbourne. So I've said to people before, being in Geelong, having to organise stuff in Melbourne is hard enough. So I can't imagine what it'd be like having to come from interstate. So how was that?
It was good in the fact that I no one else here was really, like, I didn't really have any expectation, because if I was based in Melbourne, you'd constantly be working and talking to people that you'd then see at this show. So I was removed enough that I could just quietly work away at it. And then that's what made it so much more fun when I finally got there. I saw my tiny little square of grass marked out. Yeah, it was good. It's probably the most important thing I've ever done. So
what's that, sorry?
Probably the most important sort of moment of what I've done, I reckon, so far.
In terms of growing the business and
in terms of being a little bit more, gaining confidence in what I do, and realizing that, that was at the time, I still felt overwhelmed the whole time. But I actually sometimes think back, I can't believe how I got it done. But I did, because of all the amazing people that would help in the months to follow. So I learned a lot.
Yeah. And then when you went back to South Australia after that, you did another, was it, I don't know, what is it, this show?
Yeah, it's like the
show.
Yeah, the Royal Show. I ended up, same year I went back and did one there in 2017, which was kind of like, it was a little bit of a rejig of the Melbourne one, in that I used a lot of the materials. And then I went back 2018 and 2019 again and again. And each of those three were all really good for different reasons. Like, the first one was good because people had seen the garden online, and it was nice to talk to them about my experience in Melbourne. And then I did one with a couple of people, which had it was really different. It was artwork and lots of cactus, and totally different to my first one. That was great because I got to work with an artist, and I sort of gave her free rein. I said, I'd like to do this. And this is sort of what I'm thinking. Beyond that, I didn't want to guide it at all. And now that art sits in my cafe, which is nice. So that was some nice wall. And then the third one was a collaboration with a nursery family that's been here forever, sort of 5th generation grower. And it was their 150th, I think it was. So yeah, we did a garden together. And the best thing about that was what plants do you want when you've got a nursery like that? It was just, it was a real opportunity to go nuts on plants, which is what I enjoy the most.
Yeah.
So that was that. And then,
getting much work out of doing the garden shows, or is that your motivation behind doing them?
No. So my motivation behind the first one was, I honestly don't know what my motivation. No, I tell you what it was. When you come out of studying and you're still trying to figure out how to run a business, because I haven't come from a family of small business owners. No one's really run businesses before me. It was more of an opportunity, or my motivation was to try and get a bit of a profile of some sort, to challenge myself and to do something while I didn't have work on. Like once you're really busy, you still love the idea of doing them, but it's a bit more pressure. I didn't have any pressure in terms of my time, just my finances. But now, it's funny, isn't it? With the couple of years where we haven't had the show, I think back to when in my head, I still am motivated to do a big garden there. And a few years ago, I would have probably said 2022 or 2021, because that was so far away. Now 20 and 21 are gone. I'm still motivated, but I've pushed the years back a few more. What's my motivation? It's not for work. I don't. It's a little bit like a drug. As soon as particularly coming from interstate, as soon as I get there, there's lots of people that I still probably don't even know their names, but as soon as you see them, you chat. And it's like it's like the Canberra bubble, but really positive. It's like the Melbourne garden bubble, because you do get, quite a few people from Sydney and around the place. Everyone's on this ridiculous thing that, everyone's struggling at the end. Everyone's, but no one, no one sabotages anyone. I honestly think, and I've seen it before, when it comes down to the crunch, people from other gardens all just swarm to help someone that's struggling, because everyone wants to see everyone do well, and you're not competing against each other directly as such, in the judging process. So that's why I do it, and I want to keep doing it.
How did you find the Adelaide one compared to Melbourne? Like, obviously it's not as big, but what were the
so that's
similarities?
Being our big show every year. It's always had a pretty big horticultural and agricultural element, like any of those sort of shows, but there's never been much in the garden section, display garden wise. So they had a small budget they were happy to put towards it, and I wasn't hemorrhaging money to do it, but I mean, it was good from a design point of view to try and talk to people just about design and how design plays the part in it. I mean, the Royal Adelaide Show has got such a diverse crowd. It's not it's probably not you're not going to meet someone that you do a huge job with there. It's unlikely. You meet lots of nice people, but they're potentially not really necessarily the right clients to be trying to get if you want to keep doing, nice work. I don't mean that in a derogatory way, but it was really just another excuse to do a bit of something special.
Yeah, that makes sense, because the people who go to the garden show with that, like the Melbourne Flower and Garden Show, they're in that mindset. Whereas the people who go to the Royal Show, it's not just about the horticulture. So that does make sense what you're saying.
Yeah, and I'd like to do more in the future, but then the world happened, and so that was 2020, and then it's back on again this year, but I'm not involved. I don't know. I feel like I have some sort of obligation to just be involved where I can. I don't mind the time it takes. Someone's got to do something to keep promoting the industry, so I guess it may as well be me.
Do you have any involvement with the Master Landscapers Association of SA?
I did. After I did the Melbourne show, I was involved for a couple of years there. But now I'm so heavily involved in Aildam, I'm not directly involved with Master Landscapers anymore. Yeah.
And you push do they do work like that as well in terms of promoting the industry? Like the Aildam being is it the Australian Institute of Landscape Designers and Managers?
Yeah, so it's a very small percentage of people here being members. Like it's a national organisation. So obviously I'm trying to grow it in Adelaide, but there's only so much time running two businesses as well. Being with just design focused as opposed to construction, that's I guess the point of difference that I find appealing, and that's why I want to give back to them as much as I can. And really just push the importance of the design. It's as important as the construction, but trying to explain to people the difference sometimes, it's tricky.
Yeah, you need them both. You can have one without the other, but it's better when they're working in together, the design and construction.
Yeah. I try to tell people that. I was going to say I try to tell people that design, like good design, is sort of all the bits you don't see. It's like it's not the plan on paper. It's a nice garden that's been executed well by a good constructor with a good design behind it is sort of the end result. The design is all those other little bits, like not just putting steppers in because they look cool, like what's the reason for putting them in, and all the things that you go mad thinking about and spend not sleeping over. They're all the little decisions I call design anyway.
Yeah, and that's the type of thing not everyone's going to appreciate, but the people who do appreciate are the ones you want to.
Yeah.
So when you finished the garden shows, how long after that? So you decided to start up. So you had Space Capsule Garden Co. going, doing design, and then you made the obvious side tangent to open up a coffee shop. Is that right?
No, well, there was a pre-coffee shop tangent because in 2018, actually it might have been in 2017, I took over a vertical garden business as well. That was to fill the other void. So, and that was really good. Like I learned so much from taking over something that was sort of existing, because my whole life I've always had these grand ideas for stuff, and then they never evolve past the grand idea. I get bored of them before I've done anything. So I took that over, and now I sort of do that. I still build the odd vertical garden, but I sort of pick and choose because they're not cheap in terms of materials and everything. And I don't want to build any that aren't going to succeed. So I sort of, over a few years prior to the coffee shop, I decided to sort of absorb that business into Space Capsule. And then if people still want that sort of work done, I'll still look at it, but I'll be very honest with them. If I didn't think it's going to work, I won't build it for them. So yeah, then spent too much time. I actually think what it was, I used to, when I worked on my own, I would forever find myself driving around looking for a coffee shop to just have a think about where I was going to work. I'd just go and sit down with a coffee, and then I'll go and do what I have to do. And I spent way too much time buying coffee, not going and finishing the landscaping I needed to do. And then I thought, well, I think a friend of mine was running a coffee shop, and he probably sowed the seed in my head as well. And I thought, oh, maybe I could open a little plant shop and just have a coffee machine there. And, everyone loves coffee. Come in. And then I'll have all this time while I'm there to be able to do my design work. It'll be great. So I did. I went and rented this tiny space. It's like 36 square meters or something like that. Put the coffee machine in, and pretty quickly realized the coffee was getting too popular. That was becoming the main focus, and I didn't have room for any more plants. So as I always did, I controlled chaos is my sort of theory. I rented the space next door, so that could become more of a dining room. Extended the backyard of it as far as I can to have more seating. And then that became a victim of its own success, in that people were sitting in there drinking coffee the whole time, and you had to climb over people to look at plants. Then we had the space restrictions where it's 4 people per square meter, 1 person per square meter, made it even harder. So the next shop came up, and I didn't want to get like boxed in, like a small European country. I thought I've got to bite the bullet here. So we've now opened just plants and pots and all garden sort of products in there. And that's where I'm done expanding. I can't expand. I don't want to expand ever again.
Are those 2 shops next to each other now?
Oh, yeah. So there's all 3, and they've all got a door in between each other. So, and I still can't design there because as soon as I sit there, I start chatting to everyone. But it's really good. I feel like more than anything else I've ever done, this one's sort of like almost organically growing. I haven't spent anything on marketing, or I've just sort of kept on top of everything, and got amazing staff as well. They're often underrated good staff, but
worth their weight in gold. They are.
Yeah. Yep.
And I imagine in the hospitality, it's hard enough in landscaping to find good ones, but I imagine hospitality is even harder.
Hospitality is tricky because there's so much around. So I just sort of think I just have to make it an awesome place to work. And we often talk when we're in the shop, because I still work in the shop quite a bit, about how the environment we've sort of created together is one where we work hard, we have heaps of fun, and then I pay them at the end of the week for it. Like it does. I like to think that like I'm approachable, and I want it to be a place where you don't want to call in sick. I don't want to be one of those workplaces that I've worked in before where it's, I want people to want to come there. And I think it's a good, like, sort of example of, it's kind of me if I was a shop, that's me. There's no bullshit there. And can we swear on this podcast?
Yeah, well, I'm going to mention your previous podcast, so I have to for that one.
Oh, okay, cool. Yeah. So yeah, that's where I'm at. And now I just do a little bit of design where I can, which is good, because I don't feel like I need to do those little, those jobs you would have been doing 12 years ago where you just probably should have said no at the start, but then you you want to do them a favor, you know, they don't have much budget, so you end up designing it for nothing, and then it's going to take more than a week for someone else to do. Yeah, I'll do it. I'll build it after work for you, and it'll cost me money because I didn't quote it properly, and yeah, you know those jobs. I'm trying.
Yeah.
That's what I'm trying not to do.
How's that going? You're failing?
I was on a real good run. I'm getting better at it. It's amazing when you say no to something without being rude to people.
Yeah,
it's quite empowering.
Yeah, I've heard that before.
Yeah,
so,
I'm not sure if you've ever experienced it.
Nah, just heard it. But you called it Banks and Brown, and that's got a horticultural link in it, doesn't it? The name of the cafe?
Yeah. Yep. So, I said before, often I have these grand ideas and then they never get beyond the idea. So the danger of this shop was that I wouldn't come up with a name quick enough, and I wouldn't be able to open. But I don't know how it sort of happened. I wanted a name that was something and something, because that seems popular to do. And so I thought, if it was going to be named after someone, or is it just, is it something really generic like plant and pot? I never would have done that. I would have shut it down before I had a name like that. But Joseph Banks came to mind. So, Banks is a nice, easy word to put in. And then I thought, I don't know. Honestly, I can't remember how it came up, but Brown being another botanist that was on Matthew Flinder's voyage, a bit more of a South Australian sort of connection. Well, that works all right. What would it look like if those two people had somewhere and enjoyed coffee? And I just thought, that'll work, Banks and Brown. Got emotionally attached to it, and then got the name denied because it's got the word bank in it. So I had to sign a agreement with ASIC to say I'll never offer any kind of financial services because it's got the word bank in it. And then they approved it. So yeah, and then
has that been hard for you to bite your tongue giving customers financial advice when they come in?
Yeah, the only financial advice I'll give them is the financial benefit of what these plants are going to do to your office. And I'm not planning to become a loan shark or anything.
No.
Yeah.
And once you had the cafe up and going, how long after that did you decide to start the Plants and Shit podcast with Stephen Reed?
So that probably came about just beforehand, because if my timeline in my head is correct, I reckon he came over to record that while the very first couple of ones, while I was starting to set the shop up. I don't know, we were jumping on the podcast bandwagon earlier, and that was great, but then we've both become so busy for different reasons in different ways that it's become harder and harder, and not being able to record it in person kind of makes it a bit less enjoyable. I'm sure you're enjoying this, but
No, this is my second Zoom interview,
okay.
And it's so much easier doing it in person. But still, it's better than nothing.
Yeah, and so we're sort of doing that, but like I say, we're both so. It sounds like an excuse everyone says, but we literally did get busier with our businesses, and we're still doing it. I've got one more up my sleeve I have to mix and release. We'll see where it's been really good. It's a great way to meet more people too.
Because
we tried to go outside of sort of to any creative industry. So, the very first episode we recorded here was with a lady who owns a really big winery and cheese place up here. So we're driving up there, the very first podcast, talk about imposter syndrome. We're driving up there, not having even recorded one yet, crapping ourselves, oh my God. And it was great. And we did the podcast, and she brought out this cheese platter, and we were eating cheese, and it felt like the king for a bit. And then, but no, we've interviewed lots of interesting people and tried to, when it started, we had more of a trying to understand creatives was our kind of thing. But the more we did, it was more just start chatting to people about what they do, and then but then try and get a bit more value out of what they're saying that might be, relevant, whether it's for their business or. So it's become a bit more general. And now I've started the other one, the Jungle Talk one, which is great. That's with Hayley Sutherland, I'm hoping one day might work for me, but she's
As in design? Or
no, she's an amazing horticulturalist, and her indoor plant knowledge is like second to none. So, and as it turns out, she's the person many years ago that I took over the vertical garden business from.
Yeah, right.
So we're all very close here in Adelaide.
Yeah.
So they're my 2 current podcasts. I was intrigued to see you, and quite enjoyed seeing you on your little podcasting adventure. To me, I thought it just looked like an excuse for a road trip at the start.
Yeah, I did enjoy that, but I felt bad because I'd been a guest on 3 other podcasts, and would have been no more than 3 episodes after I was on there. None of them exist anymore, so I felt bad about. I like doing podcasts, but I felt bad about shutting people's podcasts down because it must have been bad ratings. So I thought I'd do my own and not worry about the ratings or like the views.
Oh yeah, that's a good idea. It's like, I like that.
So, how have you enjoyed doing the second one compared to the first? Are they similar? Does it feel the same, or because you talk about plants, more it's different?
Yeah, the second one's been a lot more streamlined in that I've got my sort of recording set up a bit more organized. I don't have to move it or try and do it mobile. And we have a real kind of agenda for each episode. So it's quite easy, and they're only half an hour long. So it's been quite good. I've enjoyed both of them for different reasons. Who knows, there might be another one day. But it'd be good. The next one needs to start raking in some decent sponsors or something, because,
Where'd the idea of the first one come from?
I blame Stephen for that one.
Yeah.
He came up with the name, which surprised me, because he's quite sophisticated, and I would have thought he might have come up with something different. So I was quite shocked when he came up with that. He even wanted to sing a jingle for it, but I just held him back on that for his career. I decided we might just So that's where I'm at today, and I'm on a rare day off, which is very, very, very rare.
So any of those plants, any of those plants in your background, any of them, your favourite plant?
Well, firstly, they're all alive.
Yeah, I said I was going to try and ease that question in real seamlessly, but it didn't happen. So just tell me what your favourite plant is.
No, they're all really nice, and I do enjoy indoor plants, but I still come back to, like, I still probably would pick something that's from outside, because my heart's still in the traditional landscaping setting as opposed to inside. At the moment, it changes every couple of days. I'd probably say some sort of perennial, although at this time of year they're all pretty dormant. So I do love Calamagrostis. I'm slightly obsessed with that. And just, I went on a bit of a perennial rabbit hole a couple of years ago, and I'm quite happy to be in there. I love a bit more of that natural, like, I love form in a garden, but I love it when you can break through it a little bit with like some moving plants or like stuff that changes a bit more seasonally. It's not just a purely ornamental sort of magazine sort of garden. I like things that is a bit more nature coming back. So that's sort of, I'll say Calamagrostis, but next week it'll be something else. Like, I'm looking out my window and there's a really nice aloe tree that's growing quite well out there. I don't mind them.
Yep. So what's you've got at the moment? You've got your coffee shop, your design company, and 2 podcasts. So what's next for you?
What's next? I'd like to do a little bit more. I'll say this on record, because then I'll be obliged to do it. I really need to do a little bit more like multimedia stuff. So I want to start doing a few like webinars and things about Instagram, and not that I'm trying to be someone I'm not, but I'm not claiming to be a guru because there's enough of them. But I'm probably put together some stuff that we can hopefully use, on Eldom and just share with other people who are trying to start businesses, just the ins and outs of little things, cut through the crap.
Oh yeah, everyone needs advice on what they're doing in regards to that. I know I just did the episode with Brent Reed from Candio, and I posted a story that had the Instagram captions in there.
Oh, yeah.
If that's something new that I've started seeing and started to use. And then I saw Inika from Ambition Consultants did a post saying, did you know when you do captions, you can actually edit it so it's saying the right word?
So it's not just gibberish.
Yeah. So because I felt that was directed at me because I'd done one and it had the wrong words in it. And when I saw it, I thought, I think she's posted that before I posted mine, but no, it was afterwards. So yeah, so if you're doing it, if you're doing advice like that, there's definitely going to be people who benefit from it. Yeah.
See, people that know me know that I'm like completely off Facebook because I've got my opinions on why. In terms of design and work, it's not in there. It's different. It's a different clientele.
Yeah.
It's a different.
Yep.
It's a different pool. And remember when we filled up the pool in 2018, and then
yes,
that colouring went in it, and for a little bit it went a real murky colour. To me, that's Facebook.
It wasn't a little bit.
To me, that's what Facebook is for me. Whereas Instagram's great, but again, it's like, I'm really big on not putting all your eggs in one basket in anything.
I can tell.
Yeah, I know. I got lots of baskets with eggs broken everywhere, but I don't know. The more I think about it, actually, there's a few too many baskets. But even like, it's dangerous if all you rely on is Facebook to market yourself in a business, and then something changes, or the algorithm changes, or whatever. You could have to start at square one, like back to the start again. So that's why I always tell people, don't use the tools, but don't. If they were gone tomorrow, what do you exist? And that's purely through networking and doing events, and hopefully what we can start doing again soon. Yeah.
Are you doing much design at the moment? Like, do you do any advertising for that?
No, I never really advertise for it, and I don't do a lot. I do the odd sort of smaller job. I did a really, really good, interesting job, like probably one of the fastest jobs I've ever done recently, like with a really good constructor here. Basically, I just came in and did a planting sort of plan and a few sketches and bits and pieces for their presentation. And I enjoyed that as much as, I enjoyed that a lot more than all of the nitty gritty of drawing up the plans, because basically the sort of structure of the garden or of the space was done, because it was quite a lot of levels. So I got to come in at the best part for me, which is plants, and get really creative. And I can see myself doing a lot more of that. Just sort of slide in, do this bit, and then slide out before I get bored.
Yep. There's stuff you enjoy more.
Yeah. And I mean, it's not necessarily great amount of hours or huge income or anything, but it's work that I expect will get built reasonably soon. And I'll look forward to it, as opposed to when you do those jobs where if you even talk about the budget, you realize sadly a lot of them never ever get built because people just didn't understand the cost of anything. So you do these cool designs and they just end up not even, Yeah. So that's why I need to do my big Melbourne garden in the next 15 years. I'll just give myself time.
Yeah. Well, next year I think is going to still be the anniversary one. So you got 2023. You can aim for that.
Oh, cool. All right.
So with all the work you're doing, how have you got the balance going with work and the family life? Because I think
there's no balance.
Is she working at the coffee shop?
So there's no balance. So imagine, I'll put it quite simply, I'm on a penny farthing, basically riding through a cactus garden. That's me. So Kate works, she has her own job, but she often works on a weekend. She work in there on a Saturday. I think the beauty of the shop is it's such a good community of locals because of where it is, that like anyone that sort of works there gets to know people and you want to work there. So she likes having that connection. And no, there's no balance. I feel like now more than ever, I've got some like really good help at the shop now, and I have stepped away a little bit, but I need to work on more of that because I still am just 24/7 thinking about it. Because I guess what I didn't realize or completely think through was I've got living plants in this shop which need to be looked after. I've also got coffee which needs to be good, and I've got food which needs to be bought and prepared. So there's never a dull moment. Like you can never just shut the door and go home. So the more help I get with that, the more I enjoy it. Because it could just consume you.
Yeah.
Don't know how I'm still doing it.
It's because you love it.
I do. But yeah, I was watching a bit of Brent talking about working to pay employees. He was talking about in the last podcast.
Yeah.
And I think you can apply that to any business because my shop is sort of removed from, it's quite different to a design business, but it's the same thing there in that I don't want to keep growing it because what a lot of people don't understand, like they see that you're busier and you've got more staff and everything. You're like, oh, how good is it? Like you get so busy, you must be like raking it in or whatever. But yeah, just everything is a scale, and like I could 12 months ago, my expenses against what comes into the shop, it's probably on a scale, it's probably no different now, but now the shop's bustling and I've got all these great staff working there. So it's kind of, I don't like that inevitable impression that people have that everything has to always grow. And it's like the economy. It's just, people think it just always has to grow because it just does, but I don't want to keep growing.
Yeah, I'm the same.
I'm fully grown.
Yeah, yeah. You're an adult businessman.
Yeah, I want to manage
something
what
else,
I've got, but yeah.
Something that made me think of Brent before that when you were talking about the designs that you did for the garden show in Melbourne and compared to that second one that you did in South Australia. So the one you did in Melbourne was more like the type of project that you would design to get working, whereas the one that second one you did in Adelaide is more the one that you're doing the arty kind of fun one. I thought that was interesting that you kind of switch that around.
Well, I was thinking that first Melbourne one was like really, I think I kind of got sucked in, which was good because I needed to be sucked in to the whole idea of what would look good. Like I sort of I wasn't in a position then when I really wanted to be too creative and, because there's been some unusual gardens, controversial gardens over the years. I'd love to go back and do one now that's completely polarizing and people either love it or hate it. But I wanted to do
that one for Ross and Yosuke.
And I loved it. But I mean, I think I was, without realizing it, I was doing something really safe, and it was something that I'd seen. The elements I used in it were things I've seen in magazines and on TV, and so on. As a design, when I look back at it, it probably lacked a bit of like heart or like it was great. It was I really loved it, but I look back at it and think it was too aesthetic. I didn't really put enough thought into, but I mean, I had a narrative which I'd built around it, but you sort of learn over time. That sort of undescribable feeling you get when you're in a nice garden that's done for a purpose or whatever.
Yeah.
I hadn't really learned any of that, and so I was designing that's why there's probably not one curve in it. It was all right angles and sharp and not a lot of plants used, but still I loved it. But there's some other good gardens there that year.
There's certainly one that came second that was a cracker. That one.
Yeah, it was, wasn't it?
But yeah, I find that's the difference between people who are actual designers and people who do design. Like I don't know how to design that kind of feeling that you get. I know it when I experience it, but I don't know how to design it. So That's the difference between the great designers, and because anyone can design a garden, but whether it's good or not remains to be seen.
Yeah, and you can design a garden that fits all of the client's brief, and it does everything you want it to do, and it looks great. Even like you could fly over it in drones, and you can take pro photos of it, and it looks amazing. But the secret, I don't know, the secret to it having that feeling, I think, comes from the connection everyone makes with the client. Like if you kind of get, it's so hard to describe, but you'd get it when you build a garden. You know, you have ups and downs, and you have a relationship with the person you're building it for. Eventually, you just kind of, if you see it in their eye when it's all finished, that they are legitimately thrilled. And some people get emotional when, in the garden. That's when I think it all comes from that connection, but it's not something you can go out and seek. Like sometimes it happens, sometimes it doesn't. And often the gardens that feel that way, you just can't get a good photograph of, or, you can get great photos of, this is what one of my lecturers told me. He said, there's gardens that photograph well and there's gardens that feel good. And I can teach you how to design a garden that photographs really well, but you're going to have to kind of figure out what makes a garden feel well. And I still couldn't explain it to you. If I was starting a project, it just kind of comes as a result of everything falling into place. Yeah, it's a tricky one.
Yeah, that makes sense, I'm sure, to me and a lot of people. Well, I'm going to call time on it now, Tim. I was worried. I know you've done another podcast in the past. You were on there for 2 hours, so I was a bit worried this one might go a bit long, but thank you very much.
I'm planning one where I'm planning a monologue podcast where I just talk for 5 or 6 hours.
Yeah, you'll have plenty of downloads, I'm sure.
Yeah.
No, thank you for coming on. Thanks for coming on.
Thank you, Joel.
Really appreciate your time. And so if people where's the best place for people to follow you on social media? Would it be on Banks and Brown or Space Capsule one? So
my Space Capsule Garden Co. Instagram is sort of me and all my various design stuff, but we've also got at Banks and Brown, like AND in the middle. I need a little marquee going across here, like showing all the names. But Space Capsule Garden Co.
I'm not editing that in there. It's not happening.
No, that's all right. So I just make up my own. But Space Capsule Garden Co. That's me. So that's all right. Perfect. No fluff on that one.
All right. Thank you very much, Tim.
Thank you.